Lagos never truly sleeps. But at night, it sharpens, its edges, its risks, its silences. On a winding stretch of Azumba Road, a black SUV lunged into the path of their car. Tires screamed. Adana's hands flew to her belly, round and heavy with 8 months of life. Her fingers spread instinctively over it, not in fear, but protection. 2 masked men leapt from the SUV. One raised a rifle. Down, the front bodyguard shouted. Bullets struck the armored door, fast and angry. Screams, honking, people diving for cover. But inside the sealed cabin, Adana heard only the sound that mattered most. The hard, relentless drumbeat of her unborn child's heart. The second bodyguard leaned over her. "Madam, don't move. Trust me." The driver's eyes were locked forward. His grip on the wheel didn't waver. From the SUV, a voice sliced through the noise. "Bring her out." Cold. Familiar. Adana's breath caught. The driver dropped the gear. The engine roared. Metal collided with metal as their vehicle forced its way past. Eagle to base, the guard said into his radio. Azumba. Ambush. Engaging. Then a shot like thunder. And everything went white. Earlier that year, beneath the Oshodi underbridge, Lagos stirred to life. Concrete and exhaust. Street vendors and dust. Adana opened her eyes on the bare ground, chest hollow with hunger. Her handbag, frayed, faded, was the last possession she hadn't lost. She sat up slowly. The hem of her dress was torn. Her hair knotted. Her breath tasted like rust. "God," she whispered. "What will I eat today?" She stood and began walking. Past women frying plantains, boys selling sachet water, men dragging carts of fruit. Life moved past her like a current she had stepped out of. She was no longer in the river, just watching it, nameless. By noon, she reached Victoria Island. Here, the city polished its face. Towers of glass and steel. Expensive shoes clicking. Suits moving like they owned the sun. Adana slowed before one building. Silver letters, Nate headquarters. Inside the glass lobby, she saw a boardroom. Bright lights. A long table. At its head, a tall man stood with red-rimmed eyes, one hand on a stack of papers. She recognized him. Jonathan Namdi, billionaire, founder of Nate. Once the face of optimism, now visibly unraveling. "They want progress by tomorrow," he said. "Real numbers. Not these errors." His voice cracked. "Our revenue graphs don't match. Our data's inconsistent. I know we grew, but I can't prove it." Across the room, a man in gray, David, head of accounting, cleared his throat. "We're working on it." The whiteboard behind him was chaos. Sloppy arrows, mismatched charts, scribbled out metrics. Some graphs rose, others fell. Nothing aligned. It wasn't reporting. It was a guessing game dressed up in suits. Adana stood at the glass, watching. She saw something she knew intimately. Fear. The same kind she'd seen in her own reflection after losing everything. Pain is a mirror. It lets you see yourself in someone else. A janitor bumped her shoulder. "Sister, you can't stand here." "Sorry," she said. But she didn't move. Inside, the conversation burned. "This is revenue," David tried. "And what about duplicates?" someone snapped. "Last week you blamed fiscal weeks. Today it's invoice timing." The board was a mess. Weeks mixed with months, cash with promises, sales by product jumbled with sales by region. Then something clicked inside Adana. She saw it. Not just the mess. The solution. Before fear could pull her back, she opened the boardroom door. Silence. Heads turned. The room smelled like tension and burnt coffee. "Security," David barked. A few execs recoiled from her dust-covered clothes and tangled hair. "Who let her in?" Adana didn't move. "Sir," she said, addressing Jonathan directly, "I can help you. I can save your company." Laughter. David's sharp and dismissive. "She thinks this is a game." The guard stepped forward. "Wait," Jonathan said. He looked at her. Not at her dress. Not at her hair. At her eyes. Tired. Clear. Not desperate. Focused. "What would you do first?" he asked. Adana took a breath. One calendar. January to December. Sort every sale by invoice date. Then remove duplicates. Keep the latest version. Separate invoiced revenue from cash received. 2 charts. Group sales by product and by region. And show gross margin. Then compare month by month to last year. 1 picture. No noise. Jonathan walked to her. Handed her the marker. "Show us." Her hand shook as she approached the board. For 1 second. Then it stopped. She wiped the chaos clean. 12 months in neat rows. 2 boxes, revenue invoiced, and cash received. A list titled Clean Up. 1 calendar, remove duplicates, split revenue versus cash, group by product and region, compute margin. She drew a line chart. 2 lines, one for this year, one for last. A dip in March. A rise from June. A dot marked Feature X launch. A simple waterfall chart showed the effect of promotions and returns. Then 1 sentence, top of the board. Nate's core products grew steadily month by month. Cash lagged 30 days, but improved. Gross margin up 6 points from pricing and cost cuts. She stepped back. That's your story. True. Simple. You didn't fall. You grew. Silence. Then a whisper from the youngest analyst. She's right. Another nodded. We did mix fiscal weeks and months. A woman from sales leaned forward. The June dip. That's when our supplier had delays. It matches. David stiffened. This can't. Jonathan stood. Slowly. He traced the line on the board with his finger. Then turned to Adana. Thank you, he said. His voice broke, but not from fear. Young lady, you just saved my company. No applause. Not yet. Just breath. Just belief re-entering the room. Adana lowered the marker. She didn't smile. Not yet. The Rolls-Royce slid through Victoria Island's neon veins, shutting out Lego's chaos like a sealed promise. Inside, Adana sat still, her old handbag clutched like a lifeline. Next to her, Jonathan Namdi studied her with quiet curiosity. You handled yourself well back there, he said. Adana didn't look at him. I thought they'd drag me out before I finished. I nearly let them, he replied. But your eyes, there was no pride, no panic. Just clarity. That's rare. The driver slowed. A doorman in gold trim stood outside a spa wrapped in marble and soft lighting. Sir, Royal Spa, Jonathan said. We're not going home yet. Adana's grip on her bag tightened. Why? You'll see. The rolls pulled in. Women in satin robes floated past. Adana froze. Her dress was still torn. Her feet dusty. Her presence didn't match the mirrors and money of the place. Jonathan stepped out first, then turned to her. Come. She hesitated. I don't belong here. His voice remained even. You saved $1 billion company today. You belong anywhere you choose to stand. It wasn't a compliment. It was a verdict. She stepped out. Inside, stylists stared. Jonathan nodded to a manager. Everything. Hair, nails, skin, gown. Treat her like royalty. Adana sat down. Water warmed her scalp. Fingers untangled months of neglect. She didn't speak, but her silence had changed, less guarded, more stunned. Hours later, she emerged in a deep green gown, hair swept up, skin glowing. She looked like someone pulled from memory, someone she had been before the concrete and hunger. Jonathan stood slowly. You're ready. She lowered her eyes. Thank you, sir. He shook his head. No, I thank you. The car pulled into a gated estate. Iron opened to reveal a mansion of glass and stone. Lamps lit pathways like a private runway. A fountain whispered in the center. Adana clutched her bag again. Jonathan noticed. This is home. Tonight, it's yours too. You'll stay in the guest wing. You've earned more than rest. He handed a briefcase to a maid. Clothes. Essentials. Take care of her. The maid nodded. But Jonathan stopped Adana before she could disappear. Meet me in the study later. I want to know who you are. The study was quiet. Wood and books and a desk that had seen war. Adana sat stiffly across from him. Jonathan leaned forward. A woman doesn't solve a boardroom crisis unless she carries a story. She looked down, then spoke. She told him everything. Top of her class in data analytics. First-class degree in accounting. Her father, murdered. Her mother, dead months later. Her uncle, stealing the house with forged papers. Her life, scattered beneath the bridge. I lost the will to fight, she whispered. Until I saw your eyes today, I remembered who I was. Jonathan's voice softened. You've suffered more than most, but you are not finished. Then, slowly, he told his own truth. His wife, gone. His twin boys, not his, taken in betrayal. I built Nate from ashes. Maybe fate brought you here. They sat in silence. Not romantic, not awkward. Just 2 lives, broken cleanly, trying to understand what they'd become. Elsewhere in Lagos, David stared at his screen. The data model Adana had drawn was now a polished presentation, his team's, not hers. She ruined everything, he hissed. But she won't ruin me. He picked up his phone. Morning broke like glass. The boardroom filled again. Suits, coffee, nerves. Jonathan stood at the head. Today, investors arrive. They expect clarity. We owe it to them, and ourselves. He looked at Adana. She now wore a navy suit. Hair pinned, back straight. She gave us the framework. She'll walk us through it. David interrupted. Sir, we can't let an outsider represent us. It's unprofessional. Dangerous. Jonathan didn't blink. Your team failed. She didn't. She speaks. Adana stepped forward. What we show you is not magic. It's clarity. Click. 2 lines. Revenue, last year versus this year. Growth, undeniable. This is invoiced revenue. Dip in June, supply chain. Growth resumes in July. December, 40% higher than last year. Click. Cash received. Lagged 30 days. Improved in Q4. Stronger customer trust. Click. Waterfall chart. Promotions. Returns. Adjustments. Final chart. Gross margin. 6-point rise. Lower costs. Smarter pricing. No noise. No tricks. Just progress. Silence. Then the COO leaned forward. This changes everything. Applause. Not loud, but real. Jonathan turned to Adana. Thank you. And for the first time in years, she felt it. Not hope. Worth. But not everyone clapped. Across the room, David sat stiffly, jaw clenched. His fingers tapped against the table like a metronome of resentment. His voice was low, almost a whisper. You think you've won, he muttered under his breath. But this isn't over. He left the room before the meeting ended, phone already in hand. Back in the mansion, Adana sat by the window, watching the city exhale. Something inside her shifted. Not just relief. Something older. Something like belief. Later that evening, Jonathan joined her in the sitting room. He poured her tea. His movements quiet. Intentional. This world will come for you now, he said. I know. But you're not alone anymore. She looked at him. And you? His smile was faint. I stopped being alone the moment you picked up that marker. Outside, Lagos pulsed. Inside, a new alliance had begun, not built on promises, but survival. And somewhere in the shadows of the city, a man with a grudge was already setting plans in motion. In the days that followed, Lagos learned her name. Mysterious analyst saves billion-dollar tech giant, read one headline. Nate rebounds as woman from nowhere rewrites the numbers, said another. Inside the company, Adana's story moved faster than any internal memo. Some whispered with admiration, others with suspicion. But no one ignored her anymore. She had an office now. Glass walls, chrome desk, her name printed in clean, serif font. Adana Eze, head of data analytics. No title had ever felt more earned, or more precarious. She wore tailored navy suits instead of torn dresses. Her old handbag had been replaced, though she still kept it at home, folded in a drawer like a scar. Every morning, Jonathan's driver picked her up from the mansion. Every evening, they rode back together. Their conversations stretched, data, strategy, market models, but gradually wandered into harder terrain. His past, her pain, dreams neither of them dared name. Their bond, once necessity, had become something warmer, steadier. But they weren't naive. Power brings not just privilege, but enemies. And one of them wasn't far. David. He had been dethroned. His office reassigned. His team reassigned. His relevance fading like an unpaid ad campaign. But humiliation is never quiet. David watched Adana rise with clenched teeth and narrowed eyes. He smiled in meetings, nodded in hallways. But in private, he paced like a wolf with nowhere left to run. And wolves, when cornered, don't beg. They bite. One Thursday evening, Jonathan stayed late in the office to prepare for a new investor pitch. Adana, in her 8th month of pregnancy, insisted on going home early. Her belly led the way now, a visible sign of transformation. Yet she worked with the same quiet fire that had once stopped a boardroom cold. As always, 2 armed guards escorted her. The black SUV rolled out of the Nate underground garage and into Lagos traffic, its path routine, its passengers unaware that the routine was about to end. They had just reached Azumba when a larger SUV veered sharply in front of them. Tires screamed. Horns blared. 2 masked men leapt out, rifles raised. The lead guard shouted, "Ambush! Stay down!" Adana clutched her belly, her fingers spreading protectively across the curve. She could feel the baby kick, sharp, frantic, alive. "Out! Bring her out now!" one of the men yelled. The driver reached for his radio. "Eagle to base. Ambush. Azumba Road. Engaging." Then a voice echoed from the attacker's SUV, filtered through a radio, but unmistakable. "She belongs to me. Bring her out." Adana froze. "David." The first shot shattered the silence, and the windshield. The guard returned fire through the crack in the armored glass. One attacker staggered back. The other fired again, bullets pinging off the vehicle's reinforced body. "Hold on," the driver roared. He slammed the accelerator. The SUV lunged forward, smashing into the attacker's vehicle. Metal screamed. Rubber burned. Sparks flew. The attackers gave chase. Bullets pounded the rear window. The guards fired through the hatch, catching the enemy SUV in the grill. Smoke erupted. Still, the chase continued. Adana whispered, eyes closed, "Please, God. Please." The driver swerved hard into a side street. Gears ground. The mansion gates loomed ahead. "Open the gate," the guard yelled into the comms. The gates parted just in time. The SUV skidded into the compound. The steel barriers slammed shut behind them. Inside, Adana collapsed into the seat, shaking, breathing fast. Tears cut silent lines down her cheeks. "You saved me," she whispered. "You saved my baby." By morning, Lagos had changed again. David was in handcuffs. Police raided his apartment before dawn. Laptops, notes, wire transfers, burner phones, plans printed in cold ink. Enough to bury him. And he knew it. He didn't protest, didn't blink, just stared at Adana's photo on a document as the cuffs clicked shut. Jonathan rushed back to the mansion, where Adana sat wrapped in a blanket, eyes red but steady. "I should have gone with you," he said. "No," she replied. "You gave me protection. They gave their lives for mine. That's enough." But Jonathan's jaw clenched. "No, it isn't." That evening, David was charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to abduct, and destruction of property. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, executives, staff who once sat beside him now sat behind Adana. As the evidence was read out, David didn't flinch. But when he was asked to speak, he turned. "You ruined me," he said. "But you won't survive this world either. People like you don't belong here." Adana rose slowly. "Truth always belongs," she said. The judge raised the gavel. 10 years imprisonment. The courtroom buzzed. David's face twisted, but the sentence was final. He was led away in silence, though his eyes never left hers. Adana exhaled. Her baby kicked softly, as if echoing her relief. But even as the courtroom emptied, she knew this wasn't the end. David was just one man, and the shadows he had stirred were not all his own. Victory is never quiet for long. The week after David's sentencing, Nate became the darling of the Nigerian tech world. Its name surged across headlines and investor calls. Analysts cited the turnaround as miraculous. Business magazines featured Adana, sometimes with awe, sometimes with barely veiled skepticism. Inside the company, the atmosphere shifted. Staff who once whispered behind her back now nodded respectfully. Others watched from a distance, unsure whether to fear or admire her. She had become both symbol and disruption. To some, she was a savior. To others, a walking rebuke. Jonathan, always composed, now wore a different look around her, gentler, quieter. Their rides home extended into long conversations over dinner. Discussions about quarterly strategy melted into late-night talks in the garden. He spoke of losses, of love betrayed. She listened. She spoke of hope, too carefully rekindled. Their bond had evolved beyond gratitude. One evening under the soft lights of the courtyard, Jonathan dropped to one knee. He held out a ring, simple, elegant, deliberate. "Adana," he said, voice low, "you didn't just save my company. You saved me. Will you marry me?" Adana froze. Her hand flew to her mouth. For a moment, she saw herself back under that bridge, hungry, invisible, broken. And now here. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, "Yes, I will." The guards clapped. Staff watching from the veranda burst into cheers. Even the household dogs barked like they understood something beautiful had just happened. The wedding was the event of the year. A-list guests, governors, CEOs, pastors, The hall was lit like royalty had returned. Every camera in Lagos pointed at her. But Adana walked slowly down the aisle in a white gown, not like someone being crowned, but like someone remembering every step she'd taken to get there. Jonathan stood waiting in a royal blue agbada, his face calm, but his eyes welled up the moment he saw her. They said their vows. They kissed. And in that kiss, two broken timelines rewrote themselves. 8 months passed. Adana's belly once again curved forward with life. Her body slowed, but her mind remained as sharp as ever. She insisted on working, even from home, leading the analytics division with an iron mind and a calm voice. Under her direction, Nate grew leaner, smarter, more transparent. She was not just an analyst now. She was an institution. Then came the second ambush. But this time, it wasn't bullets. It was whispers. Inside Nate, not everyone celebrated her rise. Some feared her proximity to power. Others resented her ability to shift entire divisions with a word. Anonymous complaints began circulating. Favoritism, undue influence, breach of protocol. A confidential report leaked, questioning whether her relationship with Jonathan created bias. The board summoned Jonathan behind closed doors. He returned, face pale. "They're asking questions," he told her. "Whether your role violates policy. Whether we bent the rules for you." Adana didn't flinch. "Let them ask. My work answers louder than rumors." Jonathan nodded. "But they're not just asking. They're digging." One morning, Adana received a package. No name. No sender. Inside, a flash drive. She hesitated, then plugged it into her laptop. The screen flickered. A video played. Surveillance footage. Grainy. Nighttime. A familiar parking garage. Her SUV. And a man. Placing something under the vehicle. Then another video. Internal emails. Doctored. Spliced to look like she had accessed confidential information before she joined. She exhaled slowly. Sabotage. Someone was building a narrative. Carefully. Quietly. And not just anyone. The camera angle, the data, it all pointed to one thing. Someone inside security. That night, she sat on the balcony, watching the Lagos skyline burn with electric light. Jonathan joined her. "Whoever's behind this," he said, "wants more than your job. They want your name erased." She nodded. "They won't stop unless we expose them." He poured her water. "Do you regret it? Coming in that day?" "No," she said. "That marker saved your company. But it also put a target on my back." He reached for her hand. "Then we make sure they miss." The next day, Adana met with Nate's head of internal security, a man named Hassan, old school, respected, precise. She handed him the flash drive. "Analyze everything," she said. Quietly. "I need to know who's doing this. And how high it goes." Hassan narrowed his eyes. "This goes beyond office politics, doesn't it?" She didn't answer. But the answer was clear. 3 nights later, Hassan returned. "I found something," he said. "You're right. It's internal. But not just one person. It's a group." Adana leaned in. "They call themselves the custodians. They're legacy shareholders. Former board members. Silent partners. They see you as a threat to tradition, to control. You weren't supposed to be here. And now that you are, they think you're pulling Jonathan away from them." She was silent. "Then, how far are they willing to go?" He hesitated. "They've done worse. Ruined careers. Sunk deals. Paid hackers. Buried truths." That night, Adana didn't sleep. She stood by the window, hand resting on her belly. Inside her grew new life. Outside, old forces moved in silence. But she had not survived the bridge, the betrayal, and the bullet to be undone by men in tailored suits hiding behind paper walls. She wasn't just a guest in this world anymore. She was building it, brick by hard-earned brick. Lagos mornings arrive like a hesitant promise, slow, gray-edged, uncertain. The city wakes in layers, a rooster here, a generator cough there, the distant murmur of buses gathering steam. But inside the Namdi mansion, morning came in silence. Adana stood in the garden, one hand resting on her heavily pregnant belly, the other on the railing. The soft robe clung to her shoulders, and the breeze danced around her like it had nowhere better to be. Her face was calm, but her eyes didn't blink much. The report sat on the study desk behind her. 32 pages of facts, surveillance, transactions, and motives, all pointing in the same direction: betrayal by legacy. Not David this time. He was in prison, silenced by the same justice he had tried to twist. No, This enemy wore cufflinks and cologne. They spoke softly and signed checks with 6 zeros. They called themselves the Custodians, a private collective of old board members, shadow investors, and generational shareholders who saw themselves as guardians of tradition. And Adana, the girl from the bridge, was disruption incarnate. The first signs were subtle. An unexpected board audit, a polite inquiry from the investors' advisory panel, a rumor about favoritism, an internal leak questioning if her appointment violated employment protocols. Then came the doctored emails, spliced to suggest she'd been fed sensitive financial models before her official role. But Hassan had found them all. The pattern, the fingerprints, the network. It wasn't just sabotage. It was strategy. They didn't want her fired. They wanted her erased. "You should step back," Jonathan had said one night. They sat on the bedroom floor, legs crossed like teenagers. Muriel's crib was nearby, her tiny breaths a soft rhythm in the room. "I can't," Adana replied. "You've already proven everything," he said. "You saved the company. They can't take that from you." "But they're trying. Not because I failed, but because I succeeded." He looked at her. "You think this is still about business?" "No," she said. "It's about ownership and control. And the fact that someone like me wasn't supposed to walk into that boardroom, pick up a marker, and change everything." The next day, she called a meeting. Only the core leadership team. Chinyu, the COO, Hassan, legal, 3 new department heads who still looked surprised to be in the same room with her. Adana placed the file on the table. Her voice didn't rise. "This is the truth," she said. "These men are not trying to take the company back. They're trying to take it backward." Legal frowned. "If we go public with this, it will shake investor confidence." Adana shook her head. "Then we don't go public. We go strategic, quiet, focused, like they did." "Hassan?" He nodded. "I've traced their coordination. We know their proxies, their channels, even their burner accounts." Jonathan watched her like she was a storm he both feared and admired. "What do you propose?" he asked. "We stop pretending this is politics," she said. "It's war. And it started the moment I walked through that boardroom door." 3 days later, the board assembled. It was a closed session. No press, no assistants, just wood-paneled silence, bottled water, and tension thick enough to chew. Jonathan began with a polite opening. But it was Adana who laid out the data. "This company's transformation is not a miracle," she said. "It's method. It's visibility. It's accountability. That's what you're afraid of. Because under the old way, nobody had to explain anything." She clicked the slides. The internal sabotage, the leaks, the edited surveillance tapes. "We traced them all." She looked directly at the custodians. Calm, direct, unflinching. One of them tried to interrupt. She held up a hand. "No, you've spoken for years. Today, you listen." Jonathan handed out copies of Hassan's report. By the time the last page landed, 2 of the men had already packed their briefcases. The game was over. The fallout came quietly. 3 board members resigned, officially for health and family reasons. Their replacements were younger, sharper, and far more uncomfortable with corruption. Nate's stock jumped. In private, even the harshest critics admitted it. Adana hadn't just fought off the old guard. She had reshaped the power map of Nigerian tech. But even revolutionaries bleed. A week later, during a late-night review, Adana fainted. Stress, fatigue, a small scare, the doctors said. She recovered quickly, but Jonathan was shaken. For the first time since she had entered his life, he insisted on full bed rest. She agreed, but only for the baby. And then came the rain. It started with a low rumble over Ikoyi. Then lightning cracked the clouds open. By midnight, Lagos was soaked, headlights wading through floodwater, generators humming like lullabies. In a hospital room lit soft and blue, Adana screamed. Hours passed. Jonathan held her hand. He didn't pray aloud, but his lips moved. And then, a cry. Not weak, not broken, but fierce. The nurse raised the child gently. A girl. Healthy. Strong. Jonathan took her, trembling. Muriel, he whispered. You are our miracle. Adana lay back, eyes heavy, smile faint. You are her father. And her answer. In the months that followed, change solidified. Adana didn't return to the boardroom immediately, but her presence remained, like infrastructure. Chinyu took over presentations. The analytics team now worked with clarity as a core principle. Policies were rewritten in plain English. All departments adopted clean data reviews. And through it all, a new culture took root. Truth not as aspiration, but expectation. At a tech summit in Abuja, Adana gave her first public address since the birth. She walked slowly to the podium, her steps firm. "I used to think destiny was a place you reached," she said. "But it's not. It's something you defend, over and over, against doubt, against loss, against the people who smile while trying to erase you." Silence held, then thunderous applause. One morning, a letter arrived from the University of Ibadan, her alma mater. They were naming a scholarship after her for young women in data science who had no financial support. She cried, not like a CEO, not like a warrior, but like a girl who had once asked God, "What will I eat today?" The final turn came quietly. A phone call. Her uncle. Again. He was sick, alone, and dying. She visited him. Alone. No entourage. No press. He lay in a bare hospital room, his voice rasping. "I wanted to keep the house," he whispered, "but I lost myself." Adana didn't cry. She held his hand and said nothing. Forgiveness doesn't always require words. On Muriel's first birthday, the Namdi mansion hosted a small party. Just family, staff, a few close friends. Adana stood in the garden, watching her daughter chase soap bubbles in the sun. Jonathan joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Do you still think about it?" he asked. She smiled. "Every day? The marker, the bridge, the storm. And what does it mean now?" She looked at Muriel, her eyes soft. "That nothing is wasted. Not hunger, not heartbreak, not even failure. Every scar became a path." Adana Eze, born into light, driven into shadow, raised again by fire. Now a wife, a mother, a builder of systems. And far beyond the Ashadi Bridge where it began, her story was now architecture. Permanent, useful, unshakable. The end. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.